Hello and welcome to our second set of virtual field sessions. Thanks very much for joining us today. My name is Sarah Marsh and I'm with FO10 Planning and Design in Ottawa. We're pleased to be the sponsor for this component of the 2021 CSLA OALA Congress and would like to thank the Congress Committee for their hard work in planning and facilitating this event and for the opportunity to be involved. More importantly, we would like to thank the presenters who have made today's virtual field sessions possible. Site tours have always been a popular component of Congress, so we were challenged by the limitations of being unable to meet in person this year. Through our call for submissions, we were hopeful that we would be able to offer a virtual experience that would capture the essence of a site visit, and we're pleased to see that our presenters have really stepped up. We're confident that you will be impressed with the range of topics, subject matter, and production quality of these virtual field sessions. So thanks very much to our presenters. Before I introduce them to you, I'll just go over the format of this session and a few tips to help us interact with the presenters. Each virtual field session video runs between 10 and 15 minutes. While they're played, you're encouraged to enter questions and comments into the Q&A box shown on your screen, not the chat box. These questions will be visible to all delegates, but will remain anonymous. If you see a question similar to what you're about to ask, you can simply upvote it, which will push the most voted questions to the top of the queue for our presenters to answer. We only have about 5 minutes for Q&A following each session, so we can't promise we'll be able to answer them all. If you'd like to connect with any of the presenters after the virtual field session, please do so through the EventMobi platform under the Participants tab. Full presenter biographies are also included through that platform. And lastly, Ina's going to enter the gamification code for this session into the chat for you to copy, but I'll just let you know that it's VFS 237. So with that said, we can begin. Our first virtual field session is entitled Pilot Project, Living Laboratory of Landscape Regeneration, and will be hosted by Stacey Zonneveld, Morgan Quinn, and Pete North from the University of Toronto. The presentation focuses on phytoremediation and regeneration methods at a light industrial site in Missisagua, Ontario. Our second session is entitled A Children's Garden Playscape, University of Guelph Childcare and Learning Centre, and will be presented by Dan van Haastrecht, Tatiana Zakharova from Earthscape. The presentation highlights the importance of nature in the design of children's outdoor play spaces. And our final session is entitled Manœuvring Erratic Boundaries, Natural, Political, and Geographical, and will be presented by Dennis Hoffart from the City of Calgary. The presentation will guide us through plans for the renovation and approach to governance of Eau Claire Plaza, a complex urban public space in downtown Calgary, to ensure resiliency of the plaza for years to come. So we'll now begin our first virtual field session.
My name is Pete North. I'm a landscape architect and I'm an assistant professor in landscape architecture at the University of Toronto.
Pete's a friend of mine and he came out to visit the site here. He actually worked on a project, an art project that we were thinking about installing back here, and for a while I've had an idea of renaturalizing the property, and he took that idea one step further with the idea of phytoremediation.
So phytoremediation is a process where trees and grasses can filter pollutants and toxins that are found either in stormwater running off the streets or that have moved into the soil and into the water table. So there are specific poplars and specific trees that have the ability to either break down those contaminants or to extract them from the soil. So it's a natural process and it has the ability to clean the site and provide benefits for ecology and habitat creation as well.
So ever since we started AYA, one of our principal drivers has been to be sustainable and to pay attention to our natural environment. So we do that in many ways through our product and processes, but this is a very real way that we can have a positive effect on our local environment. The Etobicoke Creek, which we border, is really a wonderful waterway, and one of the things about the Etobicoke Creek is that it feeds into Lake Ontario, and so ultimately the water quality of the lake is a function of the tributaries that feed into it.
So today we've organized a community planting event, and we are restoring the eastern edge of the Aya Kitchens property. It's important to Aya because they have a beautiful property, a large-scale property that's situated along a rail corridor, and it's situated along a river corridor that are amazing networks for habitat and ecologies through the city. So the opportunity to expand on that network and to plant native species and to basically make that network larger and more resilient is a really amazing opportunity, and it's important for the health of our cities.
It's an interesting question how long it will take. We expect to see positive results within a few years, but the goal is to have a long-term plan for the project, which we imagine would span decades, not years. And this tree planting that we're doing today, where we're planting 400 trees, is just the first stage and part of what will be a master plan for the property, which will really focus on the whole property and how we can use the property to improve the surrounding environmental conditions.
Hi, my name is Eiley, and having to plant trees was really nice here in the hot sun. And I like to plant the willow trees because the willow trees are my favorite kind of trees. It was really nice to work in the community here today.
We've been working on this site at Aya Kitchens and Baths for a little over 3 years, and it serves as a laboratory for the students, the landscape architecture students, some urban design students, and some architecture students, to get out on site and to plant trees and to research natural succession and phytotechnologies. So it's been a place where things that we talk about in class can actually be applied in the field. What's I think really important to note with this project is that grad students have used this site within course study, but many of them have continued to come back and connect to this site as well. 2 grad students that have played a role in the master plan design have continued to come back, and for me it's just incredible to see that and to see the connection to a site that was something we used in school, in class, and that they continue to have an interest in.
My name is Stacey Zonneveld. I'm a landscape architect and a former student of the Masters of Landscape Architecture program at the University of Toronto. Today the site is looking a lot different than it was on planting day. The trees are growing well and are looking good. The pergola and deck are complete, but we're still looking to install solar panels as well as a storage area for monitoring equipment. We are starting to monitor water and soil through sampling, but I think the major difference that we're seeing here today is this amazing meadow. Pallet piles are a major part of mine and Emily's original design for the site. They are stacks of recycled shipping pallets that were once used by Aya for their shipping processes. They are scattered throughout the meadow and are meant to catalyze biodiversity by providing shelter and nesting opportunities for birds and animals, as well as capturing seeds that are dispersed by wind and giving them a sheltered place to germinate. It was so great to connect with Aya staff and help them plant all of these amazing trees. It also felt great to feel like you're giving back and making the world a bit of a better place, and I think Aya staff felt that as well. And I also think it gives them peace of mind knowing that their employer cares so much about their work environment and the greater environment as a whole.
Hello, my name is Morgan Quinn. I'm a Masters of Landscape Architecture student at U of T. My past experience as a geologist has really underpinned my interest in this project. We're talking about subsurface water flow, groundwater, soil conditions, and how that relates to what we see at surface. What we've seen from past activities is there's tire marks, there's compacted soils throughout the site, and what we're hoping is through the natural attenuation process, the roots of the wildflowers and tall grasses will begin to break down the soils and create more porosity, which will allow more infiltration of rainwater, which can help dilute some of the contaminants. Throughout the summer, I took 30 samples of soil at the surface down to 12 to 18 inches using a hand auger. Put them in jars with water, shook them, left them overnight. When I returned in the morning, the different types of soil would have separated, so clay, silt, and sand, and from that, I recorded the percentage of each component. So with rabbits and rodents and other sources of food, we get predators. We've seen peregrine falcons, we've seen snakes, and we've seen coyotes that moved into the site. And, you know, your opinion on coyotes aside, again, it's a sign that the ecology here is starting to take root and will thrive in the future. Using a simple homemade device called a quadrat, I was able to estimate the percentage of each plant species on a 1 meter by 1 meter plot throughout the field. And we can now see the distribution of the naturally attenuated species that are coming into the site.
I see the site evolving into an incredibly rich and diverse landscape that is still part of the study at U of T. And then in 5, 10, 20 years, with the data that's collected, we'd be able to apply it to other sites, other similar sites, light industrial areas, and say these tree species are making a difference in the northern climate, and we can essentially start to make a difference on a wider regional scale.
Thanks very much for that presentation. We'll now have an opportunity to ask Stacey, Pete, and Morgan some questions about the project. And I actually have one of my own. I think that people will be excited about this project, and I'm wondering what advice you might give others who want to undertake something similar on their sites. Like, what is working well, and what might you do differently?
Oh, great question.
Stacey, go for it.
Sure. I think having a good relationship with the site owner, in this case, Pete and Dave are good friends. You need someone who's open to these kinds of changes. I think that could be the first step to establishing this kind of relationship and trust for the changes that are happening on site.
I think projects are really an indication of the relationship between the landscape architect and the designer and the client. And in this case, the client is really open to experimentation, using the site as a laboratory, with the idea that some experiments will be successful and some may not, but over a long period of time, we can really test new ideas. So for me, that has been really, really important with this project moving forward. And then in terms of collaboration with other professionals. So as landscape architects, we started this project as students and as academics. As time goes on, we would like to strengthen relationships with other professionals, engineers, and other institutions as well. We're reaching out to Waterloo as well, and in years to come, using this as a broader laboratory for study.
Great. So we have a few, go ahead.
I was just going to say, is keep an open mind. I came to this project after it was already set up and developed, and hearing of a site that was just left to its own devices, not fully to its own devices, but a lot of more of letting nature, natural processes take their place. It was a bit new to me, and then I came in and I saw really a stunning meadow. And a site that's full of life, right in the shadow of an industrial, of an industrial facility. So it's really it's a beautiful place to be, and for me, it was quite educational coming in.
Yeah. So we have some questions rolling in. Some people want to know what resources you can recommend for species of plants and contaminants that can be absorbed or mitigated or mitigate the soil.
There is one sort of one reference right now that I would say is really excellent for landscape architects and designers. It's Neil Kirkwood and Kate Keenan put out a publication, I think 2 years ago now, Phyto, and it's a really fantastic resource in terms of plant selection and targeting contaminants, but then also thinking through the eyes of a landscape architect. So how can we be proactive, not just reactive to contaminants, but how can we start to think of sites in a way to buffer against future or potential contaminants? So it's a really wonderful resource. It's graphically, graphics are clear and well drawn and easily sort of accessible. The information has a lot of depth to it, and it's a really wonderful resource. So I would say that's a good starting point for people that are looking for direction as landscape architects.
Great, thank you. Someone would like to know, were the wood pellets used by wildlife and insects?
Yeah, go ahead, Morgan.
Well, yeah, for sure. So small mammal burrows at the base of these pallets, and there's even vegetation coming up through them, so they're acting as seed banks. And insects, I mean, the number of butterfly species and other small insects around it's too much to count even. You know, I'm trying to capture as much of it as I can when I'm out on site, but there's so much going on out there in terms of ecology. It's really, really nice to see.
For sure. And last winter, Morgan and I were there, so we could easily see all the footprints in the snow, and you could see all the trails heading right up to the piles from the sheltered kind of boundary. So you can see they're using them for shelter. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So someone would like to know, why did you choose to plant in a linear pattern rather than using a varied spacing for the planting?
There are two processes happening right now on site. So the initial plantings, the dense block of plantings on the eastern edge are targeting specific species. So there's 4 in total in a 10 by 10 grid that with really tight spacing, upwards of a meter spacing. And this is in consultation with Dr. Yola Gerska from Waterloo. The idea is that you plant them really dense to start off with, and they help to outcompete other species. And then we use those specific species as the phyto technologies that we're introducing to the site. The meadow to the west is where the pallets have been placed on a grid of 20-meter grid. And the meadow is left to its own natural succession processes. So there's two sort of parallel research projects happening, and then we're looking for direction from either one, making comparisons between the two, and seeing how advances in the phytotechnology plots respond or reflect or compare to the natural succession in the meadow to the west. So there are a few things going on that we're comparing over a long period of time. So not all of it's in a grid. It's only one area that we planted in a dense grid. And then the meadow is left, and it's more of a naturalized natural succession.
Someone's just asking if you can repeat the names. I assume that's of the resources you mentioned.
Yep, Neil Kirkwood and Kate Kennan.
Okay, let's see.
Neil is spelled N-I-A-L-L. Niall. Neil Kirkwood.
I think we have time for one more question. This one says, while I realize that naturalized plantings of the site were only implemented a few years ago, I'm wondering what changes to water and soil quality you may have already begun to notice at the site.
Yeah, really cool. Morgan, I'm going to give this to you. Morgan's been on site doing a phenomenal job the last 2 summers. She has the most sort of in-depth knowledge. So Morgan, I'm going to pass this to you.
Well, so the soil samples and the water samples, I mean, they're taken yearly, and it's only been a couple of years. So I think it's a bit early to really say there's any strong trends happening. But what we can see, I was out there today actually, and I was noticing, I was trying to measure the trees, and there's an organic layer developing at the surface. Remember, this used to be a baseball field. It was a mown lawn. So it would have been very maintained, not a lot of organic buildup. But now there's like a thick mat developing. And the idea is, and what I'm going to be looking at this summer, is the roots of these wildflowers and tall grasses that have come in are going to start breaking up the soil. So although I can't directly answer that question, at the end of the summer, I might have a better answer. I think from what I've seen, it's all looking really great. And you know, we'll see. Things, just as a geologist, I'm going to say that typically things happening in the subsurface, they take time. Everything moves at a slightly slower pace than life at surface.
Great. Thanks very much. If anybody has further questions for Morgan, Stacey, or Pete, you can always reach out to them through the Event Mobi platform. So I think we'll move on to the next video. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
The University of Guelph Childcare and Learning Centre, or CCLC for short, is recognized as a leader in innovative pedagogy and child development. The centre embarked on a renewal project to transform the children's outdoor play space and was completed in 2019. The final constructed Playscape sets an aspirational standard for early childhood play spaces in Canada and is a reflection of the latest research on child development and the importance of restorative nature connections. My name is Dan van Haastrecht, and I'm a landscape architect with Earthscape.
And I'm Tatiana Zakharova, a playground designer with Earthscape.
And you'll hear from 2 key stakeholders in this project. Valerie True, Director of the Childcare and Learning Centre at the University of Guelph, and Kim Squires, Pedagogical Leader and Instructor with the Childcare and Learning Centre.
CCLC sits at the intersection of East Ring Road and the Arboretum Road, about 200 meters from the Landscape Architecture Building at the University of Guelph here in Southern Ontario. The CCLC is a part of the university community, serving approximately 150 children each year and providing accessible childcare to campus and community beyond. It is also a place of learning for many undergraduate students, especially in the Bachelor of Applied Science, Child, Youth and Family program. University of Guelph Arboretum is within a few steps of the centre and has been a frequent site of visits by the children. The Arboretum also served as an inspiration for the colour palette and the design of the wooden play elements that recall Arboretum's forests.
There's the obvious reasons that you need to replace a playground, like it just wasn't structurally sound, the maintenance was getting to be too much, that every time we had it inspected there were all of those issues coming up related to safety, and it was 30 years old and it was really an enviable playground for most childcare centers, but you could tell it was 30 years old, and our view of children has evolved in the last 30 years for sure. And we really wanted to have an outdoor learning environment that reflected our view of children as competent and capable, but just also reflected our esteem for them as well. and provided them with what we now know to be really important aspects of outdoor learning and, nature-based pedagogical approach that we have. So it really needed to reflect our values, our pedagogical approach, and what we know about children now. And also as a lab school, it was really important for us to be a little bit ahead of the curve in this area and do something really different and innovative.
The most important asset of the site are the numerous mature trees on the property. Many of the trees are well over 30 years old and provide a well-established canopy over the site. It was a priority from the very beginning of the project to preserve these trees without encroaching into critical root zone areas. Another notable site feature was the topography. The existing playground consisted of a couple terrace levels before sloping down towards East Ring Road and Arboretum Road. We saw an opportunity to eliminate these terraces and retain the site at the boundary of the tree protection area. The ultimate design allowed for breaks in the retaining wall for hillside play activities such as sliding, climbing, and scrambling. The difference in elevation between the upper and lower play areas ranges from 3 to 4 feet. The topography creates a separation or boundary between different outdoor rooms. The upper areas could become promenades or lookouts, while the lower areas could be perceived as less supervised or exploratory spaces between the existing trees.
When, as designers, we thought of what the new playground space at CCLC could do, we wanted for it to be foremost open to possibilities, to be able to grow and change along with children and others who will enter and play in the space over many years. Outside of perhaps slides, but then kids can surprise you with those too. So all of the play elements were designed as open and flexible, inviting children to find ways to play and be in the garden, in the grass, the paths, scent areas, hills, logs, posts, boulders, nets, in ways that are open to interpretation. While, of course, meeting accessibility guidelines, we also wanted to think of inclusion as openness to differences. In a play space where rules for play have not been prescribed, there is no right or wrong way to interact with the environment.
The play space is divided into 5 distinct areas to serve the various functional requirements of the center. Area 1 is the courtyard. This area serves as a crush space for attendance taking and gathering before entering or exiting the playground. Area 2 is a central open lawn of artificial turf surrounded by a meadow of wildflowers, perennials, and native trees. This open space is primarily used for active recreation and a venue for special events or graduation ceremonies. Area 3 is the toddler playground, and Area 4 is the preschool playground. Both the toddler and preschool playgrounds share a similar program of active, dramatic, passive, and constructive play experiences, but are scaled to be age-appropriate and offer gradual challenge opportunities. The 5th area is an open explorative space where children can run on sloping lawns between existing trees and offers flexibility to the outdoor education program.
Some of the things that we really wanted to incorporate into the design were a natural progression of risk so that children could safely and in a supportive environment take chances in their play and take more risks, and also things like places where they could feel like they were out of view. Even though, of course, supervision is an issue, we wanted to create a sense that they were out of view for them.
Another piece that was really important to us in the design was having an open feeling and having more choice available for the children and more opportunity available for them. And I think that's something that we saw didn't really exist in our previous playground and something that we felt quite limited with in our previous playground. So we really loved the idea of an open feel to the playground and having more kind of open, accessible opportunities for the children.
Throughout the design, we wanted to pay special attention to the quality and variety of materials. Not only have we done this with the planting palette, but also with surfacing and with play equipment. While the focus of the letter has certainly been on natural materials, such as wood, additional elements were brought in to invite rich haptic experiences. These include, for example, climbing holes with indentations reminiscent of tree mushrooms, a flexible play net, rough ropes on corduroy bridge railings, boulders, bark, and so on. Sand, engineered wood fiber, concrete, and gravel surfaces are interrupted with poured-in-place rubber, grasslands, artificial lawn, stone steppers, and plain old dirt patches. Larger expanses of surfacing materials are too complexified with inclusion of discoverable elements. For instance, pebble were embedded into the concrete runnel surrounding water pumps, while paving bricks were inserted into the drive loop.
I think the playground gives lots of different opportunities for play with a variety of natural materials. So, of course, we have the beautiful gardens that take up quite a bit of the space in the playground, and we intentionally wanted that to occur so that the children would have such fantastic access to all those natural components and to gardens.
We were seeing the children's experiences in the gardens, the evidence of holes being dug behind one of the cabins and smearing the mud on the back of the hut, kind of making like a mud wall. And you can only imagine once the garden's in full bloom, how it's okay for them to kind of wander through the garden and dig a hole, because the intent of the garden is kind of to be like a wildflower meadow almost. So it'll seed and self-propagate, and the kids will probably end up transplanting and part of the migration of the garden itself, much like a squirrel planting its seed. It's kind of like the kids just kind of running around and being a part of the garden themselves and kind of changing it as they see fit. So maybe behind that mud hut wasn't supposed to be a garden. It was supposed to be a little digging area, perhaps.
The children have found these kind of different spaces within the design and have created their own kind of ideas of what the space can be used for as well, which I think is one of the huge benefits of a naturalized playground. It is more flexible and open, and it allows those opportunities and for the children to really take control of their own explorations and learning. And I think overall we found that because of this variety of opportunities and experiences for the children, it's really better meeting the children's needs. We've also seen a lot fewer conflicts, I would say, on the naturalized playground as opposed to our traditional playground before. And we've heard from our educators that they are having to engage in a lot less kind of conflict resolution or behavior guidance and management in these different scenarios. Of course, risk is a huge opportunity that the naturalized playground now offers, much more so than our traditional playground would have before. There are a wide variety of different risky opportunities for the children. And of course, research shows that risky play is critical for children's learning and development, and it offers them a lot more opportunity to really develop that resiliency and those skills going forward. I can think of several examples of toddlers in particular engaging in these explorations with their bodies that they were so proud of themselves afterwards. And particularly on the fallen tree in the toddler playground, it may not look like it's too much of a challenge to kind of any adults looking at it, but for a toddler whose body is not very large, that is quite the hill to climb and quite the tree and the branch to overcome. And so watching them kind of make their way up the fallen tree and onto it, and then the huge smile that came onto their face afterwards was so wonderful to be able to see and to observe. Overall, I would say that the response from our team has been really positive, and they've really loved the new playground and the children's connections that they've been making with it. Our response from our families has also been very positive. I think everyone's kind of continually impressed when they see it. And I know that we've had lots of community members come in as well and also been equally kind of in awe of the space that we have, but also how it's been designed and how we're able to kind of make use of that space.
Really, we talk about children being competent and capable, but a lot of what we do every day in their lives doesn't really tell them that we think they're competent and capable. And we feel like our outdoor learning environment really says to them that we believe in their capability. And by navigating some of those risks that they might take on our structures, the log jam, or any of the different elements in the new outdoor learning environment, they're getting to not only take risk, but maybe deal with adversity a little bit. And that definitely builds resiliency, not just physical resiliency, but for sure emotional resiliency. And just that feeling that they can overcome adversity through taking those risks in a safe, supportive environment. So it's really important to their holistic development for sure.
I think to us, it's this idea of children are nature, and they are part of nature, but we focus perhaps a little bit more on how we can help them strengthen their relationship with nature even further, and how we can help them understand how critical nature is and how they are truly part of it and how they can care for it themselves. And so giving children continual opportunity to connect with nature and to strengthen that relationship that they already have with nature is really valuable to us and to them in their growing lives and the way that they learn to interact with the world and learn to care for the world in the future.
What I feel like when I go out there now is it feels like a really big, beautiful, kind of like a backyard with all the gardens, and some kind of nostalgic for me to get out there, and it just feels very natural.
The CCLC's nature-based pedagogical approach has been reflected in the design of the outdoor play space. Thoughtful, whimsical, and imaginative interactions between the children and their environment have been both observed and encouraged at the center. It is well documented that time spent playing outside is critically important to child development, and this research ought to be reflected in the design of early childcare playgrounds. The CCLC Play Space received a CSLA Award of Excellence this year, and is an acknowledgement of the importance of well-designed nature-based play environments and their impact on early childhood growth and development.
Thanks. That was a really great video. We already have questions rolling in, so I think I'll just dive into them. The first is, when discussing the possibility of incorporating natural playground components in projects with clients, concerns about ongoing maintenance requirements inevitably come up. Do you have a sense of how this new play space compares to the previous play space in this regard?
Sure. I'll take this one, Tatiana, if you don't mind. So in terms of maintenance, the previous playground was constructed out of wood as well, and it had lasted 30 years, so it did live its lifespan, although there were ongoing maintenance involved to keep that operating. The materials that we use contrast with for maintenance in the fact that a lot of our materials are large diameter logs, which are a lot more durable. There's a lot more meat to that wood, so if during any decay process, it'll be very long lasting. It's also not as vulnerable to damage. Those large diameter timbers, they're not, in a case where vandalism is a concern, they're not vulnerable to burning or anything like that. And then a lot of the other materials are also very robust. The species of wood that we select are specifically selected for their longevity. So they're either a softwood with resins like Western red cedar, Alaskan yellow cedar, or Douglas fir that have those decay resistant properties. And they wouldn't be mounted in the ground. They'd be supported with concrete footings or stainless steel brackets. And then our buried wood would be Robinia, which is a very durable hardwood from locust trees. So a lot of research and development has gone into the wood species that we use. Wood is our primary building material for all of our playgrounds, so it's an area that we're very comfortable working in and specifying wood and using it properly for its longevity.
I'm sort of curious about the planted spaces too and the maintenance of those at the site.
Yes, absolutely. It's always a discussion with the client right up front. If they want to garden, they need to be aware of those maintenance requirements. And that was a discussion right at the beginning of the design where they wanted to have kind of like a self-propagating wildflower meadow, but they also needed to understand the maintenance requirements with that. And that was something that they were willing to embark on. A lot of childcare centers wouldn't. So we often design our childcares to be a lot more maintenance-free in terms of planting, just selecting planting areas that where they're most important rather than like a very broad garden. Because it's at the university, there's other disciplines there, like horticulture students, things like that. So the idea was, or the hope was, that the University of Guelph Child Care Center may tap into some of those resources and maybe even use it to educate horticultural students in the area in terms of maintenance and different species of planting material.
So I think we have time for one more. Do plants face soil compaction, and how do you manage this?
Do you want to go for that one, Tatiana?
No, I think I'm going to skip on the soil compaction one. But if I just might add very quickly, Sarah, to the last question, I suppose I just wanted to say it's also part of it is allowing that garden to change in ways that we haven't planned for, and that I think includes plants that we have sort of been labeling as weeds, and allowing dandelions as they enter all the spaces to also allow the garden spaces, allow the seeds to fall down from and be brought from sort of other spaces. But Dan, I will leave the soil compaction to you if you don't mind.
Well, I think that kind of ties into soil compaction and the evolution of a garden, and what is a garden, what is a weed. If the soil gets trampled or compacted, maybe that's okay. Maybe it's not okay. I think to avoid, like, soil will become compacted. The children are not forgiving. They'll go and they'll explore whatever. So you need to design and plan for that. If soil compaction is a concern to you, then don't plant a garden, or at least something that won't tolerate soil compaction. You can try to accommodate their desire lines with stepstone paths or other things like that. You can select the areas of where the gardens could be so that they're not vulnerable to that wear damage. But you're going to have to plan for that. Anyone who has small kids knows that, the kids get into everything. So, and that's okay. If you've got nice, tough perennials and shrubs, if they pick a flower or something, that's kind of part of their education at the same time. We educate them to treat plants with respect and care, and also that they're great tactile feature of the playscape.
Absolutely. I think, we speak so much about the importance of children's connection and all people's connections with nature. And I think a little bit sometimes you have to let go of or we have to let go of our designer need for aesthetics and control of aesthetics as it evolves, and let children actually be with nature, even when it results perhaps in some, hopefully not the complete trampling.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your response to these questions. Unfortunately, we're out of time. We have to move on to the next session. So do feel free to add questions to the chat while the presentation is rolling, and then we can get to them more quickly. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks, everyone.
Hi there, this is Ryan Mortson with the Urban Initiatives Group at the City of Calgary. I'm a landscape architect and a project lead for large-scale public realm and design and construction projects such as the Eau Claire Plaza redevelopment. In Urban Initiatives, our work strongly advocates for the role of landscape architecture in constructing high-quality public spaces that bring vibrancy, resiliency, and social equity to Calgary's urban areas. We use innovative approaches to engagement, design, and construction that focus on placemaking, community well-being, and environmental stewardship to foster significant public and private investment in our urban open spaces. Calgary's at a crossroads, reaching for transformative means to reimagine itself beyond resource and energy roles. The Eau Claire Plaza plays a vital role in setting the foundation for the evolution and investment in the Eau Claire community and the greater downtown. Its proximity to Calgary's greatest natural asset, the Bow River, we are leveraging provincial investment in flood resiliency and life cycle improvements to transform this area with significant public realm improvements. This is a space where nature and the urban fabric collide, sculpting an iconic landscape designed to set the stage for public life. Eau Claire Plaza connects the vibrant mixed-use Eau Claire community, the Bow River Pathway, and Princess Island Park, and it's a place for neighbors, Calgarians, and visitors alike. The design is grounded in history with adaptable and engaging spaces that support social and cultural gatherings of all scales throughout the entire year. As such, the vision for the plaza area is a year-round, welcoming, compelling, and sustainable park to fulfill its role as a cultural destination and a catalyst for private development investment. To create a space that constantly feels active and vibrant, the aim is to create a rich environment for casual use and to support diversity, flexibility, and adaptability in daily programming and special events, regularly occurring small-scale public events that build a sense of place and community in this public area. The plaza redevelopment offers a wide range of flexibility for program configurations. The site may accommodate up to 4,000 people for large performances or events, while smaller character areas create flexible outdoor rooms that are well suited for more intimately sized programs and activities. While the vision for the plaza redevelopment and the overall design concept have remained constant, the design and construction process continues to be challenged by evolving contexts, economic uncertainty, budgetary constraints, and now the current pandemic have required the team to be nimble and strategic in prioritizing areas of refinement and collaborating with other initiatives in Calgary's greater downtown areas. Given the complexity of this particular public space and the ambition for its locals, visitors, and Calgarians, the long-term success for its stewardship depends on establishing a suitable governance structure, outlining and implementing a comprehensive management plan that includes funding, staffing, maintenance, operations, programming, and animation, and developing a funding strategy that is grounded in projected operating costs and diversity of revenue streams to meet the current and future needs. I thank you all for listening, and I hope you look forward to the remainder of the presentations today.
Welcome to Eau Claire Plaza. Reimagined Plaza will completely redefine the space in terms of public amenity and events programming. We're looking to significantly open the space up and provide a flexible space that will allow for various sized events, various styles of events. Really key to supporting impromptu gatherings and social connections. A major part of the project is our flood resiliency strategy, and part of that for here is to raise the grade of the entire area to the top of the steps. It really helps to connect those spaces, provide better accessibility for all users, and like I said, it brings the elevation of the plaza up to the 1 to 100 flood level, and that's a key element to our flood resiliency strategy. Part of Calgary's history, we hosted the 1988 Winter Olympic Games, and there was in the background here, one of the installations here was a Olympic arch, and just adjacent to it is a flame representing the torch, and so that history will be relocated and preserved to another location on the site that gives it a little bit more prominence and acts as a gateway into the plaza, and again also serves to open the space up to be a little bit more flexible. The area traditionally was the industrial heart of the downtown, and a key part of that was the Eau Claire and Bow River Lumber Company. They created what is now Princess Island Park by digging a channel on the south side of the river as a way to capture logs as they floated down from the foothills in the Kananaskis. And so in behind us here is the original office building for the Eau Claire and Bow River Lumber Company, and again that will be relocated into a much more prominent location, preserving some of that heritage and history of the area. It also serves as an anchor for some of the wayfinding and storytelling of what that history is, and so there'll definitely be
an element to the project that examines that history and celebrates
this
it.
project has been under development in various versions for over 10 years, and it's really been parallel to the planned redevelopment of what used to be, or what is, the Eau Claire Market. So it was a new urban market idea that was installed in the mid-'80s, and in recent years it's really suffered decline and lack of use. Really interesting. So as the designs and the integration of the plaza into the urban downtown was the development of plans for a new envisioned multi-use market with residential towers, and looking at adding a public transit LRT platform within that space as well, and integrating that into the new design of the Eau Claire Market. And that really helps to establish accessibility to the plaza, and provides, as the plaza becomes a significant destination, access to the plaza through that really allows all Calgarians to come down and enjoy the plaza. It's really exciting project for the city, as it exists in this place that's really unique and is at the center of and connecting our urban downtown and the Bow River and Princess Island Park, which is a beautiful natural area, and it's a destination and a driver for pedestrians and cyclists and active play. And so the design of the plaza celebrates that collision of urban and nature in all the various elements, with the open kind of formal plaza and podium space to the more central green area, and then coming north into the reimagined water and urban beach area, and then again with the relocated Eau Claire Lumber Company building in behind us. Will be that kind of second anchor, and what we're calling Market Street, which is an extension of that space that we've developed in coordination with the private developers as a pedestrian-focused access that comes right from the downtown all the way through, and has full access down into the water at the lagoon edge there. Major pedestrian connection to Princess Island Park is Jaipur Bridge, and that needs to be repaired and replaced as part of its life cycle maintenance, and so that'll be raised as well to meet some of our flood resiliency goals. And then in between us is this major pathway that exists along the entire south bank of the Bow River, and that promenade space is incredibly vibrant, is well loved. And so with the redevelopment of that space as well, there's an integration of a flood barrier that helps to protect the downtown from high water events. And it's been really neat because we've taken a very unique approach in which all the projects have been working really closely together with several consultants, several business units within the city, and we've really worked together collaboratively to ensure that we have an integrated design and a seamless delivery, so that from a citizen's perspective, it really is one project. There's been challenges. There's been challenges in arriving at that integrated design, and really trying to encourage that collaborative process. It really has challenged the ideas of schedule and budget and design and individual responsibility. And by sharing all of those pieces, we've really found synergies that have provided cost savings and schedule overlaps that we've taken advantage of. Lagoon is an offshoot of the Bow River and is the portion of water that separates the park space from the island, Princess Island Park. And it really presented a great opportunity to highlight that integrated design. So we're at the interface of three infrastructure projects: the replacement of the Jaipur Bridge, introduction and extension of that downtown flood barrier, and the northern boundary of Eau Claire Plaza. And what we'll be installing in the lagoon right here is a dock and a public space that allows people to experience that water's edge, and that becomes the terminus of the Market Street that connects the downtown, the private development adjacent to the plaza, comes right through adjacent to the relocated Eau Claire Lumber Company building, and extends through a series of terraces down to that water's edge. We're able to integrate sloped and ramped pathways to ensure that dock is accessible by all users, and really helps celebrate the area, the location. The water feature and play splash pool was a major element that was well loved in the original version of the plaza, and so it was an element that we were very keen to extend and recreate in the new design. But we also wanted to make it usable for all ages, accessible to all people, and so we landed on an idea where water jets would be sprouting out of the ground and really interactive, allowing that water play, but also acting as an architectural element, highlighted with various lighting pieces. So it's kind of a really exciting part of the new design, but it also it helps to define the northern edge of the space into an area that can be used for gatherings, for picnics, for an afternoon play date, and so that's going to be a pretty neat part. Beach, so a sanded area that really allows that play and encourages it. The area will be kind of interlaced with movable tables and chairs that allow users from an updated and reimagined food and cafeteria or commons type building, in which there'll be a few commercial retail units and flexible tenant spaces and flexible tenant accommodations in which there's ideally a large common area breezeway that's accessible by various tenants and restaurants, and that use is encouraged to spill out into the plaza, really encouraging indoor-outdoor vibrancy and use of the space for all seasons.
We are encountering erratic boundaries as we navigate through this program. While there is shifting property lines, the impact of a new LRT interface, or new funding opportunities, the project teams collaboratively adjust. Once the dust settles, we will be left with an amazing public space that will define how people navigate the natural and urban boundaries of our city.
Thanks for that presentation, and thank you to everybody who has submitted questions during the presentation for Dennis to answer. We'll just dive right into them. So the first question is that you mentioned raising the plaza and implementing a barrier as an approach to flood mitigation. Can you describe how the barrier is achieved while maintaining a connection to the river, and any other approaches to flood mitigation that you're considering?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. There was 4 or 5 different strategies that we used for flood mitigation or flood resiliency, and involved raising the grade of the entire area, also some earthen berms terrace landscaping with large cliffstone boulders, and where space and other constraints required a physical wall or barrier, and there were strategic openings created in that barrier that could be filled with stop logs with advance notice of a high water event. So through those openings, we were able to maintain access, both visual and physical access to the river. Thank you.
Great. Some folks would like to know what consultation process did you have with First Nations?
I'm not actually able to answer that question. It was another team member that managed that part of the project.
Great, thanks. What's the timeline for construction, and how will this project be funded?
Timeline for construction, some really exciting news there. We should be mobilizing to site in the next 3 or 4 weeks. Our design is not quite complete, and we're taking a bit of a design build or construction management approach on this, which speaks a bit to the funding. So at the end of last year, we applied for some provincial stimulus funding to help stimulate the economy in light of the pandemic. And so we were successful for that application, and that really leveraged and accelerated the timeline for the project. We're still looking to complete a funding gap that will be a bit of tomorrow's problem. Work for another day, but we'll be looking to ensure that the project is completed.
Is there any private funding for this or investment in this project?
The project itself is entirely publicly funded. Where we're hoping to do some collaboration is on the interfaces and the perimeter with the private industry.
Okay, we have another question here. Someone would like to know who pays for or is responsible for moving furniture inside each day.
So that's another part that we're trying to sort out. We'd like to create a new governance model for this park, similar to ones that have been used successfully in other cities in North America. And we've hired a consultant to help us move through that process. But ideally, at the end of the day, we'd end up with some sort of public-private partnership or conservancy that would manage a lot of the operations and maintenance programming for the space.
Okay, and we have one more question. Is there a digital version of the plan for the Eau Claire Plaza available online? I think you mentioned it's in progress.
In progress. I'm hoping to have our DD report available publicly shortly. We do have the Eau Claire Public Realm Master Plan online, and that's kind of formed the basis of our design work for this project.
And just, is there anything else that you wanted to share with the group about the plaza, or anything that you couldn't fit into the video?
Couldn't fit into the video. It's really been quite an exciting project. Things are changing day to day. We weren't anticipating starting construction for at least 5 years, and then in December, the announcement was made that we had some additional funding, and we hit go. And so since then, it's been a bit of a whirlwind and trying to kind of build the plane as we're flying it.
Yeah, hurry up and go.
Thanks for that.
Well, thanks very much, Dennis. And thank you again to all of our presenters for the virtual field sessions. It's been really great. And it is kind of neat how you feel like you're there when you hear the background sounds and the birds chirping at the site. Before we wrap up here, I just wanted to invite everybody to attend the OALA Awards ceremony, which is starting at 6 p.m. There is a bit of a two-step process for registering for that, so you might want to try to log in a little bit before 6 o'clock just to make sure that you're there on time. And again, the code for the session, if you're doing the gamification activity, is VFS237. Thanks very much.